Welcome to the latest edition of the Leader to Leader podcast. I'm your host, Susan Spears, President and CEO of the Fredericksburg Regional Chamber of Commerce. Our guest today is Rick Yost. He is the Superintendent and President of Fredericksburg Christian School. Rick, welcome.
Thanks, Susan. Appreciate you having me here today.
It's so good to see you.
Yeah.
I can't wait for our listeners to hear a little bit more about you. I've got a bio in front of me. I'll hit a couple of highlights, but we're going to talk about your journey here in just a minute. And you know, I hope you guys can tell that are listening how friendly we sound. I have known Rick for a long time. Here in his bio, he says he spent 22 years with the Leggett department stores. And he was an assistant corporate director of store operations, general merchandise manager at Leggett in Fredericksburg, and he also worked around a bunch of other stores in those 22 years. Well, somewhere in that journey, towards the end of his journey with them, I worked at Leggett, which was then Belk.
That's the best part.
Yeah.
Having you working there.
Yeah, so I was the Estee Lauder counter manager, and he was one of the store managers. And I've said this many times, but the thing everybody remembers not only how wonderful it was to be under such a kind leader, but every day Rick would go around the whole store and make sure he shook your hand and spoke to everybody that was working. And I'm sure that has carried on in your journey beyond then, but it's quite memorable how kind you were in that tough retail world, and I loved working with you. Later, while I was still there, you left and you went to Fredericksburg Christian Schools as assistant superintendent in '97. And then you became the superintendent and VP in 2004. And today you are superintendent and president. And I am talking to you right here as you're on the way out to lovely, happy retirement land soon.
Sort of.
A little bit later,
yeah.
But it's coming. It's like we can see it in the distance here now.
Yeah.
You've done all kinds of stuff in the community. I certainly know you from. Also, Rick was in the first Leadership Fredericksburg class in 2008. So
100 years ago.
Yeah, it feels like it was. Anyway, I've got all your other stuff here, but you know, there's a lot behind that story. You also you were born in Florida. You graduated from Stonewall Jackson High School in Manassas, so just up the road. You know, the whole everything's changed so much up in Manassas and everything. Yeah. Went to Virginia Tech and then Regent for your Master's of Educational Leadership. Yeah. Thrilled to have you here with me today.
Great privilege.
Yeah. Let's chat a little about, since this is a leadership dialogue, tell me about that journey. You know, that there was a journey that took you first into leading in retail management and then leading you with the schools.
Yeah. Well, first I have to say thank you. This is such an honor for you to invite me. And I know the listeners know you very well, but I truly can't imagine there being a better president of a chamber anywhere in the country than you, Susan. Your leadership is incredible, and the whole community kind of gathers around you and follows your lead. So, in many, many ways. So I think it really is a privilege to be invited by you here, and I voice the opinions of hundreds of people around the area that know you well. So thank you for all you do.
Oh, thank you. You're kind. Yeah.
Well, I've been probably a 50-ish year journey. Longer than that, actually. In high school, I remember having leadership positions in my church youth group, and then when I was at Tech, I did a few things there, an RA and a dorm president.
You were an RA. Ugh.
Yeah, I know. Yucky.
Dude.
Yeah, clean that room up. And then on the honor court and just a bunch of small things. And I don't think even then, after high school and college, I really recognized it as leadership. It was just I was just drawn to it. I think probably called is a better term to use. But then after I got out, went immediately to work with Leggett, and find myself obviously in management and leadership programs there. And I didn't. One thing I didn't realize that then is that I was thinking, well, you gain experience and then you get promoted, but to actually look at leadership as a very strong part of who you are within an organization, and that leadership needs developing. I had no recognition actually until I came to Fredericksburg Christian, and then I saw that it really is important that there is a strong leader. Probably because there were a couple that I worked for who were just I just thought, wow, how do they do that? And they were such great examples, and they were patient tutors for me, and that's when I began to realize that leadership needs to be developed and honed, and not only for your sake, but for the sake of the people that work with you. So the journey took me, all those places that you talked about, and it's expanded beyond the borders of school and in this community, and I've come to realize it as leadership, as serving, because obviously in a Christian school, Christ is at the center of everything, and if there was ever a servant leader, it was him, and so we need to follow the example.
Well, and so you can have your natural skills that lead you into that kind of a role,
right?
And when you go back, like when we think about retail, and you just automatically, both of us were promoted and made managers because probably things people saw in us. But to your point, at the time, like it was in the 90s, and for whatever reason, neither you or I were probably thinking about honing that part of what we do. So like I was always going to schools on the product I sold and how to work with your customer and things like that. But yet I was leading a team right there. Yeah. And so it was how do you some of it I think we're both lucky that I think that relational side is natural to us.
Probably
so we probably got lucky, and that's why we did well in retail.
Yeah.
Because some people, if you have to learn customer service, if you have to learn how to massage relationships and all that, it's probably hard.
Yeah.
And that came naturally. Yeah. But then the skills of when you have the difficult customer or the difficult employee or all of that, those are the pieces about learning your leadership. Yeah. And then to say it's not about me, it's about serving others. That's a whole other level of thought.
Exactly. You can get the right tools in your toolbox. You can, I've been to many classes. They teach you this is a leadership skill. You need this skill, this skill, this skill. But how to use that effectively that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I remember that first year in Leadership Fredericksburg when you were in it. It was all new to me too. And the first
you
thing,
couldn't tell.
Yeah, thank you. The first thing that Greg Hebert taught us that really resonated with me and stuck with me had to do with active listening. And he talked about particularly if there's someone that annoys you or, somebody you work with and you kind of tune them out and all that, there's a reason that they're telling you something and all. And he talked about being really present and listening. And I realized in that moment how often I tuned things out and that I could be a much better listener and then I could be a better leader, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got that message strongly in that leadership Fredericksburg too.
Was there anything else in that time or any other leadership principle that really stuck with you or has stuck with you?
During the time of...
Or whether in the class or otherwise. Like for me, a lot of it is around communication has been the key piece. Yeah,
I think required reading in Leadership Fredericksburg was Fierce Conversations. Was
that
one of the books? I don't know if you still use that or not, but that was great. I mean, I think people who are relational sometimes shy away from having those fierce conversations, and they're some of the best things you can do. So that was a learning experience for me. And the LMAP was, honestly, I can look back over my 50, 40-something years of leadership and say that was one of the most valuable things. I still tell people to this day, going through that LMAP was one of the best things I ever did. Really see yourself as others see you.
Right, and so LMAP for our listeners is a 360 that we take. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. We all know it's like the military, but not. It's our Leadership Fredericksburg language. But that's LMAP for our listeners is a tool that we use in Leadership Fredericksburg for doing 360 ratings. So Rick was brand new in the program, and he had a manager and peers and direct reports, and then vendors or external clients, people like that, all contribute to this tool and take this survey, and as well as he himself, and then it compares how you see yourself and how others do.
Super valuable for any leader.
And scary, right?
Yeah.
Scary to let people rate you, and then go see what they say. It's like, oh, you're kind of scared to open it up that first time.
Yeah. but really valuable. Again, it was one of the most valuable things I ever did. So anything else during my, the early part of my leadership was a few epic failures.
Oh.
And I looked at those at the time as their career killers. I really, made a couple of errors, and I'm like, made the wrong person mad politically or whatever, and I thought, well, they're devastating, and I'll never get past this, and shame on me. I'll pick another career somewhere, But those are the other most valuable things in a leader's journey, is you have to when you fail, you have to own it.
Right.
To me, I tell the people that are leading others, I say, one of the best things you can do is to own your mistakes and failures, and you gain a lot of respect that way. Plus, you learn a lot.
Yeah, because we're all but human, right?
Yeah, maybe. Not you.
Okay, just listeners don't. He's being way too nice today. Yeah.
Sorry.
That probably ties into. I had a question for you about your leadership style.
Yeah.
How would you describe your style? Has it changed over the years, or besides being an incredibly friendly and nice person, like your leadership style?
Yeah. It's kind of. I really. In anticipating our time together this morning, I did give some thought, because I haven't really tried to define it in a 1 minute speech. And I know nothing about horse racing. Okay, it's like I couldn't tell you the difference between a furlong and a paddock. I have no idea. But what you see is there's a lot of preparation that goes in ahead of time. When the race starts, and the jockey kind of takes over, the horse does all the work. So I kind of see myself more as the trainer before the meet, but during the race, a lot of give the horse a lot of rein, not much whip, and beforehand give him that, like the trainer does, the encouragement, the tools he needs to do the job, the training, all those kind of things, and then let it go, and hopefully you've done your work ahead of time. If it gets off course, fix it the next race. But I think that with the ahead of time, the nourishment, the training, all those kind of things, giving treats, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Encourage people, because you don't have to show that you're confident in them. And that you value them and you care about them. If you don't have that, you're not going to. They'll listen with their ears, but it never goes to their heart or their mind. So that's the early stuff. And then during when it's go time, whether it's somebody trying to meet a sales goal, or whether it's a teacher in a classroom, or mid-management person or an administrator, when it's go time, it's on them. I'm not standing behind them doing the job. They're skilled to do that. So give them the rein, let them go, and every once in a while, if you got to crack the whip, crack the whip. So don't do too much of that. And that's the thing that gets misinterpreted, and that probably happens with you sometimes, is if you're a person who is mostly relational and encouraging and all that kind of stuff, you can be taken advantage of, and people will go, get away with that. That's no problem.
Right.
What they don't see is what happens behind closed doors when you do it in the appropriate place and the appropriate time. Not that I'm perfect at that. I'm sure my people will tell you they can tell when I'm not in a good mood or something, But if you have to get tough, crack the whip. And so I think all those things work together. That's kind of a new analogy for me, but I think that says it pretty well.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard to describe it. Yourself, one of the things you could say is, what would people around you, what would they say? We don't know. We know an LMAP, but like three words that describe Rick or whatever. Yeah. And I think they'd all be warm by and large. Is what they see, a warm. And you mentioning servant leadership, I would say, you
exactly.
You epitomize that.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I mean you forget all that. You've got to have a quality product, whether it's sales, whether it's just management oversight, whether it's board chairmanship, whether it's school administrator. Excellence and results have to be there.
And not just that, but I don't know about you, but I've always been wed like completely to the mission of whatever it is I'm doing. When I sold product in retail, I believed in what I sold.
Yep.
I didn't lie to my customers. I didn't try to oversell them. I think that's why I did so well. I'd listen to them and say, you know, I know how to build this sale. I know what I've been trained to do, but I know what's right for this lady or gentleman.
Yeah.
I know what's right here. And they're going to come back if I do what's right by them, you know. And I don't think I could have been there pushing that product if I didn't believe in it and love it myself. And the same thing goes with now being at the Chamber, you being at Fredericksburg Christian School. That mission is like down to my toenails. You know, it's like you got to believe in it, or how do you go in every day if you don't
100%.
believe in it? You know?
Yeah, 100%. And it informs everything that you do. It should. If it doesn't, you've got a problem. So that mission needs to be right in front of you every second.
And then about 2 years ago, because we are sitting here today, we air this and it'll we record this and it'll air in a couple of days. But I think this is the week 2 years ago. Yeah, we're right on it. We're right around the week when everything shut down 2 years ago.
Yeah.
This is March 2022 that we're talking.
Yeah, right.
And I dare say if you and I had run into each other in February of 2020, we wouldn't have known what we were about to face. We have just come through and are hopefully on the end of a 2 year just total disruption, you know.
Right.
Yeah, and just so many moments. You know, we were chatting right before we started recording about some of the things that we did to work our way through all that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and now in a hopefully post-pandemic world, what does leading and our future kids and everything look like? You know, I'm sure your optimism still comes from the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. The last 2 years have been extremely tough. And I can tell you, it was March the 13th.
Yes.
When we closed down.
Yeah.
And by the 16th, our teachers had pivoted to totally online at the school. So they did an amazing job then. But it's been sad to see. We won't know for a long time what it's done to our children.
Right.
I think we all have a really good idea of some of the impacts that it's had on our kids and all of us. But in my world, that's what we're really concerned about. And so, though you want to mitigate what those impacts were, how you assess what those impacts were. So we're trying to mitigate those the best way we can and just encourage kids and all that kind of stuff. But it's so great now to see kids participating in things that they haven't been able to participate in for 2 years. And it really, it's just a breath of fresh air. And I hate, as you said, I'm retiring at the end of the sort of. I'll still be working. I'll still be at the school. I'll still be on the board.
People.
No, if they let me stick around, or if my board doesn't find out about me after 25 years, they'll let me stick around and do some stuff. But they're like, the last 2 years, I sure wouldn't have chosen that to be seemed like the core of everything, all the decisions we've had to make. It was interesting trying to do that day to day and see the changes. Exterior changes. For leaders during that time, as you know, there's never been, if you did a SWOT analysis, your strengths, weaknesses, threats, those kind of things, never been that huge of an amount of pressure from the outside and issues coming from the outside that threaten your organization. So it was a good training ground for a lot of us as leaders, but I sure wouldn't have chosen for my last 2 full-time years to be that. But I learned a lot. It was great to see, the encouraging thing to see all our people, and I'm sure many, many organizations like Mary Washington Hospital, like the Chamber, you got, to see heroic people showing up every day and working in the middle of that. So in some ways it's been pretty encouraging, but tough.
As I agree, it's something that'll be talked about forever, but I think as I look back on it, each one of our businesses sometimes is in crisis. So your business alone or your industry alone. You think back to the late 2000s when kind of development got hit, like building, housing market, all of that. Meanwhile, other things
Right.
were all normal. Like
Yeah.
you looked over at the hospital, it was normal. The schools were normal. This part of our industry, they were struggling for all the factors that were happening there with that recession. Other times it might be right here. This particular nonprofit may be going through a bad cycle or something, but the world around it still looks normal. And in the last 2 years, the ground was like taken out under our
Right,
feet.
exactly.
You know, everything, like you didn't know what was next. It started with toilet paper, right? Like,
Yeah.
wait, I'm out of toilet paper? What?
That's
I can't get it. I looked on Amazon. It's
That's right.
$50 for, what, just
We live our lives.
and now here we are 2 years later. It's supply chain issues. It's workforce, it's the Great Resignation is now a term that's come out of this. Cancel culture seemed to pop up in the middle of it
Right.
as people became divided over some of the issues that came out during the time of the pandemic. And even now we're looking at inflation and all that. It's like one thing after another in the world around us. So to be here able to just focus on
Right.
things like leadership, it is so critical
a little bit
because
refreshing.
having that steady ship, people in the midst of all that want to look up and see, well, Mr. Yost looks calm, and inside maybe not.
Yeah. Totally. Not sleeping
Yeah.
much during all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah. And the thing I would ask people as leaders to consider, we don't like to toot our own horn too much most of the time, but look back at this time and ask yourself, did I find out what I could do in the
Right.
midst of a really bad situation? Right. And like you said, it happens in businesses and nonprofits all the time. It's sort of sporadic and cyclic maybe, but to look back and say, and I look at all the people that work with me and I say, wow, you really stepped up. You really figured out that you can do this, and you learned a lot about yourself as a leader. So if nothing else, I mean, if you wanted to put a positive spin on it, and I would rather, did you as a leader find out who you are and what you can do?
Yeah.
Because now, look, you've been through that. Wow, I can do a lot more going forward without those threats on the outside. Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. My only regret of being back in the office is my 2 Labradors aren't sitting beside me all day. I do miss that. But otherwise,
I'm sure they miss you too.
Well, as we start to wind down, I do want to ask you if you have a favorite motto or saying that you'd like to share with us, with our listeners.
Yeah, I do. One piece of really strong advice, you and I talked about this before we turned the mics on, was that I would strongly encourage people. It's been invaluable to me over my leadership journey over the years. Have 2 mentors. One who does what you do because they're the only ones that can understand. They're the only ones who understand the loneliness that's specific to your position. And the other one is find a mentor who is outside of all that, so they have a unbiased perspective on things. They know you well, and both of those things. That's kind of a dual track. You need to keep those in your hip pocket all the time, and one of the most valuable things. So a motto, and people have gotten tired of me saying this over the years: hold it loosely, and because leadership sometimes seems to be one crisis after another one big project after another one huge board meeting coming up after another one. So, it's all those things. And if you're trying to carry that weight by yourself all the time, then it'll be too much weight for you. And obviously, from a faith perspective, I'm like, what's God going to? I'm telling God, look, I got this. I'm not letting you help me at all with it. So I'm holding on to it pretty tight. That's not what He wants. It's not what is going to help you, whether you have a faith perspective or not. Hold it loosely, because that invites other people to come in alongside you and to help, and that's where the best solution is going to come from. Intervention from the Almighty or from other people helping you. So hold it loosely, and you're going to get past it. So
Love it. Hold it loosely. Good. That's actually really good stuff, Rick. Anything else you want to share before we close out?
Well, I just like to say I'm grateful. I plan to still be involved in the community and things after I retire, and I'm, like I said, on a couple state boards and things like that. So I look forward to that. But I am never unimpressed by the Fredericksburg community. And I've said many times it's the biggest small town you'll ever be a part of. And the reason for that is because of the relationships that people have, the community leaders. You know better than anybody, Susan, what kind of leaders we have in this community.
Yep.
You see them all the time. And it's unique. And I'm just real grateful for it. I came here in the business world. I'm finishing my career basically in the nonprofit world. And there is support, strong support for both of those. We've weathered a lot as a community, and I think even with the growth that we've had, it still keeps that great sort of a personal flavor, and people are here for each other. And that's all I can say about my journey here. It's been the biggest part of my journey in leadership has been here. And it's been just amazing, and I'm very, very grateful for it. And for anybody listening, thank you for what you've contributed.
Oh, thank you, Rick. And, some of our listeners could be all over the world. So in case you're listening to him and you're thinking, now, where did he say? We are in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and that is about an hour, if there's no traffic, south of Washington, D.C. We are considered, it depends on who you're talking to, but most consider us the bottom tip of Northern Virginia. And the region that we're talking about has grown by more than 400% since 1970. It's a big region, and it has a growing population. It has 5 jurisdictions within it, and it's got a river that runs through it. It has 3 military installations, great educational institutions, green space, and it's got some development. It's a pretty nice place to be.
Amen.
Yep, and we're also an hour north of our state's capital, Richmond, Virginia. Yep. So, and the other cool thing about being here, besides our people, is with that location is you can be in the mountains, you can be at the beach, you can be in big cities, all pretty quickly.
Perfect.
Mostly though if traffic works. But anyway, that's who we are for our listeners, and it has been awesome to be here today with our guest, Rick Yost, the Superintendent and President of Fredericksburg Christian School. Thank you for being our guest today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Susan.
Yes. And again, I am Susan Spears. And if you have not already subscribed to the Chambers We Are Business podcast, please go ahead and do so. Then you'll know when new episodes are available. And while you're at it, if you could jump over and give us a review so other listeners can find us easily, we would be so appreciative. Thank you. See you next time.